this is gonna be a fun one. I've got topics planned, but I don't even feel like I need to. You and I are kind of going around the circuit in retail media, commerce media. I feel like we're talking a lot of the same things. I mean, look, just to put a couple stats out there, $100 billion business out there. It's expected to be. It's focused on data collaboration in every panel we talked about today. Mobile, identity, measurement, retail media comes up. So I guess you're onto something.
Finally, everybody's recognizing it.
Right? I think we had you here about 4 or 5 years ago, right, when you were at a predecessor company building retail media. You joined Albertsons Media Collective about 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago.
Correct.
Can you just talk about that move? Why did you join Albertsons? What got you excited about coming there?
Yeah, so a lot of things, but probably, I wasn't looking to make a change at the time, but I got a call from Albertsons, and I thought, well, how big is Albertsons? I didn't even know. And you start to dig into the scale and the size of the company, and you realize that they should have one of the top 5 retail media networks in our industry. But they had been outsourcing it for years. And so the CEO, right, thank you, Amazon, for starting to reveal how much profit they were making off of their ad business. The CEO and the CFO really understood what a value creation opportunity it was for them so that they could continue to evolve as a retailer and meet all of the new digital customer demands that were coming at them. Where else do you find the sourcing to be able to continue to evolve as a retailer? And retail media really offers that. But more importantly, what I got excited about is there was very little legacy in terms of what kind of data stack they had, the technology infrastructure. It was a company that was undergoing a significant transformation. So I kind of had a blank slate to come in and build next generation retail media network based on everything that I learned, in my prior experiences in working in retail media. And then on top of that, I actually report directly into the CEO. And so we are seen as a strategic priority for the company. I have a lot of air cover to be able to keep moving really fast and be really nimble. And we're on a really fast pace to grow because the company is completely committed to it.
Yeah, I've heard you talk about this concept of late mover advantage. So you were by no means a late mover into retail media, having done it at Target 7, 8 years ago. But coming to Albertsons, you had that advantage. How do you think about leveraging that late mover advantage? What has that meant for what you guys have been able to do in the industry overall?
Yeah, I think one of the key things is, again, the tech and data infrastructure that we have is now based on what we know today about computing power, where we see AI going and influencing how you behave as a retailer in these big data stacks. All of our data is centralized in one place, which a lot of other retailers that grew up by acquiring 14, 15, 16 different companies, they would never have all of that stitched together the way that we do. So this late mover advantage has just put us in a really plum position because it's done with all of the advancements that have happened in the last 5 years, but it's also done with knowing what's coming. And I don't feel the weight of having, I call it Frankenstack. I don't have a Frankenstack that I have to work with because everything pretty much is fresh and it is based on the latest.
Yeah, it seems like that position has allowed you guys also to lean in heavily into the future of things. And I think you're also coming from it is unique, it shouldn't be unique, but you have a media background, right? You grew up on the demand side of media, you saw the evolution of programmatic. A lot of people running retail media came from the retailers themselves, right? So they have a little less of this history. I guess maybe before I get into a question of some of the initiatives, just how has that perspective helped shape what you're trying to drive, both at Albertsons, but as well as the sort of industry overall?
Yeah, I have a lot of empathy for what it's like to be a media person in a world where you have a couple of walled gardens that are only going to, there's one winner and there are very few others. So to have alternatives in the marketplace that are scaled that can really drive business was one of the things that really interested me the most about retail media. So now I've got a scaled alternative to walled gardens. And for the most part, retailers have to be great partners because, you know, our business relies on the CPGs and all of the other advertisers. So it can't be a we're going to take and we're not going to give back. It really creates this beautiful ecosystem and partnership. And so to be able to have a scaled alternative, so we know at least half of the US adult consumer population. We see them on average 2.5 times a week. So what we know about consumer behavior is significant, and it is important, especially in the marketing ecosystem, where a lot of the data that we've been using heretofore is coming out. And we are not the consolation prize. We are actually a big improvement in the marketplace. And to be here at this point in time when that is really going to become a reality for the marketplace overall is super exciting for me. And you know, to have a nice alternative. I mean, we can make linear TV more accountable. We certainly can make CTV and all of the new media more accountable too. But we have the opportunity to change a lot of it.
Yeah. I mean, half the U.S. population, 2.5 times a week. I hear reach and I hear frequency. With any media channel, one of the push and pulls, especially around walled gardens, is the notion of standardization. I've seen numbers from McKinsey that have said with standardization, we could add another $5 to $15 billion of spend to the retail media channel over the next 3 years. You know, we've seen some calls from marketers like the ANA. You've seen some calls from technology providers calling for the standardization. We've also seen a call from you at Albertsons. Why are you guys leaning so much into standardization? As you probably noted, the other walled gardens aren't always calling for that. So why are you guys leaning so heavily into it?
I just think it's super important. And if we really want to realize the potential that retail media has, we have to be a whole lot easier for buyers to engage with us. And so we're each a unique snowflake, as I like to call us. I'm not referring to the snowflake, but a snowflake. And when you take Procter & Gamble, they spend an enormous amount of money on staff and time to try to normalize us. And that's not their responsibility, that's ours. And if we really want to grow and be the solution to the marketplace that I know we can be, we have to standardize in some of these key areas so that it's easier for all these brands to engage with us, so that they know when we talk about our audiences, they know what makes up an audience. When we are talking about measurement, they know how we do our measurement. It doesn't necessarily mean we have to all do it the same way, but it does require some transparency, so it's a whole lot easier for advertisers to understand where we're different and where we're similar.
Yeah, so we've, I guess inside of that, you know, as I think about standardization, it certainly has brought the programmatic ecosystem, right? Grew up on standardization, built around the cookies, right? Which was the third-party signal. And I actually think a lot of publishers probably hate the birth of the cookie, right? Because it meant all of a sudden that they were judged on audiences that came to them versus you know, the quality of their audiences. It doesn't matter if you're CNN or an MFA site, if you're the same cookie, you know, that could be valued the same. You guys are obviously coming with a lot of unique data. So is that the overall premise of the differentiation? Like, how do you continue to differentiate in a world where you're bringing standards to it?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of, yes. I think it comes down to where do each of us come from? So you look at Albertsons, we're 14 different brands, really all across the country. And every one of those businesses, every one of our stores grew up servicing the community in which they're based. And so you see this really deep contextual conversation and connection that we have with the neighborhoods that we're sitting in. And for a brand, that is wildly attractive because brands are trying to be as relevant as they can be. So why not partner with those companies that have that kind of relationship with their customers? Big box retailers are going to have a different type of relationship. They see their customers on average 4 times a year. We see them 2.5 times a week. So one of the discussions we had in standardization was we should classify how often, what's our frequency?
Yep.
Like, how often do we see the customers? And that's important for an advertiser to know, because you would use those relationships in different ways. You'd communicate in a different way. You might even use them for different occasions.
Yeah, absolutely. So shifting gears here to just off-platform. So we talked about this morning, there's retail media, which is channel more on your site. There's commerce media, which is the broader lens where you're using audiences to find people off-site. You guys have been one of the leaders in driving this. And something you've been talking about for a long time, actually, moving the data you guys have off the platform. I think it's been 4 or 5 years. How has that progress been from your perspective? What's sort of the state of leveraging retailer data in the off-site ecosystem today?
Yeah, I would say we have better opportunity to do it now because there are better companies out there that can facilitate it and do it in a way that is privacy compliant and really follows the wishes of our customers. And so and we've had this conversation, which a retailer has really valuable assets in the audiences that we can build and the fact that we can show that products were actually sold. Procter & Gamble does not need me to go buy more Facebook ads for them. They can do that on their own. So how do we think about bringing our most valuable assets to the marketplace and making that really the proposition? So is it really media? I don't know that it is. I think that it's more about growth acceleration and what we can provide as a wrapper around any kind of marketing and media activity that's going on because of the type of data we bring and because of the type of measurement capability we have. So when you talk about, media and platform, I think we're more platform long-term than where we came from.
Yep.
That doesn't mean we own really valuable media inventory through our site and our app and our stores. I mean, hundreds of thousands of people come through either our digital channels or our physical channels on a daily basis. So there's value to that. But I think what we can bring to the marketing ecosystem is even bigger than that.
And do you think of that, so thinking of it as a platform from an Albertsons perspective or from a ecosystem perspective? I think one of the big challenges in retail media for many people in the space working at retailers is that fact. They're retailers, right? They're not media companies and they're not platforms. How have you guys thought about that? I know, as you noted, brought in by the CEO, have a lot of buy-in, but what's that perspective of that balance between we're a retailer and we're a media company, or a media platform?
Yeah, I think where we will start is we will apply kind of that growth optimization idea to our relationships with CPGs, right? So right now we have a relationship with a CPG. We have a list of 17 things that we expect them to invest in, and if they do that, we'll cut this deal. Where we're leaning into is we have a list of 17 things, but if you use these 5, it'll drive this kind of growth for you and for us, and here's where we focus our deal. So that's how you bring these different retailer assets to CPGs. Then when you get over to the other side and you think about for a non-endemic, for an automotive company, it's incredibly valuable to know the shopping behaviors of our different audiences and the triggers that we see that absolutely would make a group of customers, an audience, a high potential group to buy. And so how do we bring those to the market through our partnership with like the Trade Desk and some of the other partners that we have so that it's easy for people to access real people doing really real things at scale, which is hard to find right now.
Yeah, it makes sense. I think one thing that I keep coming back to, and this was discussed a lot at this retail media event we were at the other week, was this notion of inertia. And I think you've got a pretty unique challenge in that there's massive opportunity, no doubt about that, both on-site and into the off-platform, and yet you've got sort of 2 aspects of inertia that are very challenging for you to manage. The first is what we just talked about on the the retailer side, making sure people are comfortable leaning into media. The other is actually the media side of the world, right? There is, as you just stated, cookies are going away in not too distant future. We need outcomes, we need better data. You guys bring a lot of that. But as we know, the media ecosystem is always very slow to act. So how do you think about competing or sort of pushing against that inertia? How are you guys continuing to drive it forward?
I think the primary piece is to just show performance.
Yep.
And we have more and more case studies all the time that really show that performance. I mean, we're even just the panel about sustainability. I mean, we can take a lot of waste out of the ecosystem just by knowing what's working and what isn't. And so there's a lot that we can bring to the market. That doesn't mean that we won't still be fighting against inertia, but what are the things that we see? You see a Criteo who's aggregating a lot of smaller retail media networks and bringing them to market in a really interesting way. All of the agency holding companies have formed some kind of commitment to a retail media capability. It used to be just an Amazon expert, now it's a retail media expert. So we're seeing the momentum pick up, and I've been in this space for 7, 8 years now. This is just now that we're actually starting to see that tipping point where everything's starting to pick up and the hockey stick is going up. So I think the inertia is dying down.
Yep.
But I will say, if we continue to be really hard to engage with across the retail media sector, because we all do it a little bit differently, I've worked in the business long enough to know as a media buyer, I'll be like, too much trouble, I'm going on to the next thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Walled gardens are very interesting when they're really big, but they're not that interesting when they're a tiny little box.
Exactly.
Last question here. Obviously, the other major topic of today has been AI. I think, Jeremiah, got a lot of people thinking. You've been there 2 years. I think your first year, big initiative was talking about off-platform. Big initiative this year was standardization. I guess my question is, maybe what is the big initiative for next year? But how else are you guys thinking about leveraging AI into your platform?
Yeah, I mean, AI is part of big initiative for next year, so it's a relevant question.
Yeah.
I was also remembering, we did our moonshot day that you came and attended as well. So
the
side
McKinsey people
story.
said something about Web3 that day. I don't know
Yeah,
if that was
exactly.
the moonshot. We're going
Yeah, that wasn't it.
We're pivoting to AI.
Exactly, the pivot. There was a session that we did with our CEO, and Connor came to that as well. And the whole brief was, let's really take all the tethers off of retail media. Like, what could this become? And it was a fascinating session.
Sure.
And we really stretched far in terms of where retail media doesn't look very much like what we know it to be today because of the assets. But back to the question about AI, I mean, right out of the gate, if it can be easier to create creative, so content, which retail media is not necessarily known for really great content. Right now we have banners that have some kind of price and item in them, is predominantly what we publish. But there is a need for rich, great creative programs that are based on a customer insight that shows up in the way that we develop creative. So that's coming, and AI will help with that tremendously and save us the problem of trying to figure out how to build a studio and hire an executive creative director and blah, blah, blah. Let's just cut to the chase. Yep. The other piece I'm really excited about, and any of you who have agency experience, is there is a ton of cost sitting in the middle of any media business that requires all the human beings that have to create a media plan, buy the media, optimize the media, and AI is going to take a ton of that work out of the system. And not only will it allow us to run more efficiently, but it'll actually allow us to do far more optimizations than humans possibly can right now. So it will also drive greater effectiveness. So just from an operational perspective, I think AI is going to be a big boon to what we're doing as soon as 24.
Well, perfect. Thank you so much for joining us. It's crazy to say that at 50 billion or 60 billion going to 100 billion, that retail media is still in early innings, but it certainly feels like it is. So really appreciate it, and appreciate all the leadership you continue to bring to this ecosystem.
Thank you. My pleasure. Thank you.